Hi everybody, welcome to Learn Bass Today. My name's Casey and I'll be your host, and we are going to learn bass today. What a name. At any rate, this is my very first lesson, both for YouTube and for my website, learnbasstoday.com. And what we're going to do today in our very first lesson, I'm sure we're all excited to be getting in and playing, but I think one of the most important things we need to do is familiarize ourselves with our instrument, the bass. 4-string bass. So let's start with the body of the bass. The body of the bass is this big hunk of wood right here. The body is definitely a determining factor in, the style of bass, and you can look at this and some people will know, some people won't. This is a Fender Jazz bass, and this particular one has two cutaways, lower cutaway and an upper cutaway. It's made out of wood. Most basses are made out of wood. It's generally going to be a hardwood such as maple, ash, mahogany, you name it, though somebody's tried to make a bass or a guitar or something out of it. This one is made of ash. Not only does it affect the tone, how deep or how mid-range or trebly your instrument is, but it also is a big factor in how much the instrument weighs, which as you start playing, the more you're standing up and playing, you're going to start thinking about how heavy that bass is. Some people like heavy instruments. They think they have better tone. Some people don't care. They'd rather get tone out of pickups and other things than have a super heavy body. Moving on from the body is this, the pick guard. It's this piece of plastic here. Pick guards are made out of all different types of materials too. This is just a cheap plastic pick guard. For the most part, it doesn't serve any purpose other than a look factor. Does it look cool? Are the chicks going to dig you because of your pick guard? Or the dudes? I don't know what you're into. I don't care what you're into. But at any rate, for most people, it doesn't make any difference. If you play with the pick, the initial idea is, if you're really digging in and picking hard, you're not going to dig into the wood and chip up, the finish of the instrument, which, some people really like that dinged up look anyway. So that's the pick guard. The next part of the bass we're going to go over are the pickups. This particular bass is a jazz bass. It has two jazz style pickups. The amount of pickups you have and where they're positioned depend on the bass that you have. For right now we have two, and as I said, they're jazz style pickups. You have on this bass a neck pickup, which is closer to the neck, and you have your bridge pickup, which is closer to the bridge. As a general rule of thumb, your neck pickup is going to have a little more bass and low end and growl than the bridge pickup. The bridge pickup is generally going to be a little woodier, maybe thinner, a little more mid-range, just because of the location of that pickup. What the pickup does is it takes the vibration of the string and it converts it into a signal that is sent across your cable via your output jack to the amp, and that's what you hear. It's the string vibrating. If you didn't have pickups, you really wouldn't hear much. You'd have an acoustic bass, and with this, wouldn't do you any good. So basically, once that signal is taken from the strings through the pickups, it is sent to the electronics on the bass. At the very least, you're going to have a volume control and a tone control. This particular bass has a little bit more than that. It's a deluxe jazz bass. I'm not going to necessarily go over all of the controls, but you're basically going to have volume, which controls how loud, from quiet to, oh my god, the neighbors are calling the police. This bass has a pickup selector. I can either roll the knob back towards the back pickup and get more of the back pickup or the bridge pickup, or I can roll it more towards the front, get more of the neck pickup. Or I have a center indent, which I can tell it's right in the middle, and I get both pickups. Your bass may be a little different, maybe exactly the same. That's this bass. And then generally you may just have one knob for tone. My bass has a treble, a bass, and a mid-range knob, but a lot of times it's just one knob that one side is more towards bass, one side is more towards treble. A good rule of thumb, turn everything all the way up and you'll make everybody happy. The other thing you're probably looking at is this little chunk of metal right here. This is your bridge. The bridge is where your strings attach, and most basses have little holes for each string to run through, and then they go and they attach to the headstock at the tuning pegs. However, this particular bass goes through the body. This gives me more sustain when I'm playing. That means the strings will ring longer when I hit an open string, and that's just the way I like it. I can go through. I prefer through the body instead of through the bridge. Now, once the strings go through the bridge, whether it's through the body or through the bridge itself, they go over the saddles. Each string on this particular bass has a saddle that it runs over. That adjusts how high up the string is off the fingerboard, the distance from here to here. And that's adjusted by how high the saddle is and how far back the saddle is. The other thing that it does, in some basses, not all, it adjusts the spacing of the string from this string to this string. This particular bass has a couple little grooves. I don't know that you can see them, but there's little grooves, so I can make the strings a little closer together, a little further apart, depending on your preference. A lot of things are preference, which you'll figure out once you start playing more. So we were talking about the strings. The strings on a standard bass are E. That's the lowest note, the one closest to your face. The A string, the D string, and my personal favorite, and probably a lot of yours, the G string. So those strings go through the bridge, they go across the neck. This is the neck, this whole apparatus here, also made of wood. This particular bass is made of, well, excuse me, the neck on this particular bass is made of two types of wood. Maple on the back, and then the fingerboard, which is this little darker piece of wood here, is made of rosewood. In the fingerboard are two different things. One are the frets. The frets are these little metal jobs right here. That is what allows you to sound different notes on your instrument. Most basses have frets, some of them don't. If you don't have frets, there's no defined area that is going to sound a certain note. If you hit right here on a fretted bass, we know that's an A on the 5th fret of the E string. However, if you don't have a fretlet, or if you don't have any frets, you have a fretless bass, then if you don't nail it right where that A is, you might be a little off and it will sound out of tune. So that's the purpose of the frets. They're made of metal. They are made of different types of metal depending on the manufacturer of the instrument. And that's not really important at this point. That's, again, another preference thing. The second thing you're going to find on the neck are these little dots. Not all basses have these. These are called fret markers. They generally are at the 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, 12th fret. And then it just repeats. As you'll probably notice, there's two empty ones, fret marker, empty fret, empty fret. It's the same pattern the whole way. Two empty, one, two empty, or excuse me, one empty, one empty, one. So that's just to let you know kind of where you are. Some basses, not all, if they have fret markers, if they don't have them here, a lot of times they're going to have them on the side. And you can see there's a fret marker there, same place it is there. So you don't have to be looking like this to see what fret you're on. You can generally pretend like you're looking at the crowd, having fun, when you're really looking down at what fret you're at. That's a little bit about the neck. As the strings pass down the neck, they go through what's called the nut. Some people laugh and snicker, especially my younger students when I tell them about the nut. I don't know who came up with it or why it's called that. Again, doesn't really matter. However, the nut is what the strings go through and keep it on track to end up to its respective tuning peg down here. It also keeps the spacing of the strings, and there's a little groove that each string passes through. It has its own little groove that it gets into the tuning peg. And that brings us to tuning pegs. The tuning pegs have a lot of different names. Some people call them tuning gears, tuning heads, machine heads. You pick the one you like, you call them that. I'll probably use all those terms interchangeably, so don't get confused. The tuning peg basically allows you to tune the instrument, makes the E string, the E string, the A string, the A string, etc., etc. The tighter the string, the higher the note. The looser the string, the lower the note. This bass has there's four strings, and that's what keeps the bass in tune and allows me to change the tuning of each string. That's all on the headstock. The headstock is part of the neck. It's all one piece. But it's the head or the headstock, depending on what you want to call it. So those are the basics. We've gone over all the main components of the bass, what they do, what their function is, and how everything works, what the name is. That's about it for this lesson. Next lesson, we're going to start with left and right hand technique and get you playing. I look forward to that. Once again, my name's Casey. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, you want to put me down, whatever, that's cool. You can check me out at www.learnbasstoday.com. Have a great one, and happy playing.